epic collapse or a comeback for the ages? We'll figure it out. Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. We have a lot to get to, but we start, Caroline, still shooketh from watching the Knicks, who were down 22 in the fourth quarter with 7 minutes to go and looked absolutely dead in the water. Come back, fight their way back to overtime, and come away with a 115-104 win over a Cleveland team that had it and absolutely collapsed. Was this a collapse, or was this the greatest comeback we've ever seen?
I do think it's both, but it is more of an epic collapse and an epic choke job from the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, we just had the win probability up there. This was the Cavs game to lose. Like the Cavs had this game in the bag. And you see it right there. That graphic should make Cleveland Cavaliers fans everywhere sick to their stomachs. That graphic should make Kenny Atkinson reevaluate every decision that he made yesterday. Every in-game decision, what color socks he decided to wear, what he ate for breakfast. That is complete and utterly unacceptable from the Cleveland Cavaliers. You don't have a 99.9% of a chance of winning a basketball game going into the fourth quarter without it being a majority of your fault and a majority of you just totally and completely tinkling in your pants as part of the reason why, as how we look at that game of, did the Knicks win it? Did the Cavs choke it? I mean, you see it right there. That is exactly how the Cavs totally and completely choked it away. And, whenever we're watching games, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, what's the take? What's the biggest story? What do fans want to listen to on Yahoo Sports Daily the next morning? And I had totally and completely made up in my mind of, this is a really uncomfortable position for the Knicks to be in. Of, the Knicks go down 0-1 in this series. Is this the Knicks are just going to choke it away again? Is this the different coach, same story for the Knicks that we saw last season, just totally and completely tucking their tail between their legs in the Eastern Conference Finals? But no, credit to the Knicks. Credit to Jalen Brunson, who was absolutely Superman last night. Didn't matter how many threes they missed in the first half and in the first half in the third quarter, because it was a lot of missed threes in the first half in the third quarter. But for Jalen Brunson to totally and completely take that game over, for Landry Shamet to be hitting clutch shots late in the game to tie things up, and the Knicks just did everything right, and the Cavs snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Fitzy?
Yeah, you're right. The Knicks did everything right. The Cavs did everything wrong. And look, there's a great stat out there from ESPN Stats and Info talking about win probability. And with 7 minutes to go in this game, the Knicks had a lower win probability than the Jets currently have to win the Super Bowl next year. So what the Knicks did in the last 7 minutes is more improbable than the Jets winning the Super Bowl this year statistically. But if you're a Cavs fan, I guess my question to you is, why are you surprised? Look, if you've got a group of friends and one of them's dating somebody and you find out that she's crazy, right? Like, she's just a handful, she's just wild, you can't handle her, right? Then another friend dates her and she's crazy again, and another friend dates her and she's crazy again, and then you start dating her. You can't be surprised when it turns out, what do you know, she's crazy. We have watched Harden for years, and this is why the phrase "you hardened in the playoffs" exists, because Harden is a liability when you really need him in the playoffs. This is not a hot take. This is a reasonable, logical take based on the way that Harden has played over and over and over again. If you are a Cavs fan and you're surprised that Harden is part of the reason that you lost this game, you should look in the mirror and ask yourself why you didn't expect Harden to lose you this game. The Knicks got Harden, this is a real stat, to switch into 9 isolations in the fourth quarter and overtime, and they got 1.9 points per direct action. They got almost 2 points per time that they were able to isolate on Harden, because at the end of the game, he was a liability. And the problem is there was no other answer. Whether it's Atkinson, the coach, can't figure out a way to call a timeout and get everybody calmed down. Whether it's the Cavs can't figure out a way to prevent these switches. Whether it's Donovan Mitchell needs to figure out a way to be more assertive. I don't know. But at the end of the day, what you ended up with is the Knicks realized, just like when you're playing rec league volleyball and you realize there's one guy that sucks and you keep going after that one guy, Harden was the one guy in rec league volleyball you go after over and over and over again. And it worked. So I would love to sit here and say, shame on James Harden. But honestly, the answer here is shame on the Cavs for not realizing this was the inevitability. Shame on anybody that sat here and said, no. Harden's going to be good in these playoffs, because this is what his entire career has been in the playoffs. If we're sitting here today talking about the meltdown of James Harden as a big part of why the Cavs lost with any tone of surprise, shame on us. Harden was Harden, and that's a big part of why the Cavs lost while they melted down. And Caroline, I don't know how you put this behind you. I don't know how you just come back and say, oh, yeah, 22 points up in the last 7 minutes, and then just absolutely ass kickery. I think it was 44-11 from that point on. They were outscored 44-11 from that point on. You think about what that means and how you put it behind him. You see the quote here. He's been one of our best defenders in these playoffs. I trust him. Okay. That's fine. But at some point, you got to stop looking at what you've seen in every other game and look at what you see right now. It's possible for great hitters to be in a slump. It's possible for great players to be getting got. I think at some point, you've got to fix this and change it. They didn't, and now I don't know how you recapture momentum.
It's fine if Kenny Atkinson trusts James Harden, if he's okay with getting fired for that. Because I think last night was a fireable offense for Kenny Atkinson. So if James Harden was the hill that Kenny Atkinson is willing to die on, fine. But you'll lose this series, and you'll probably lose your job. Because for the sixth time this postseason, James Harden had more turnovers than made field goals last night. 6 turnovers, 5 made shots. That is totally and completely unacceptable once. Much less 6 times, not your career, in a single postseason. Which makes it even worse, adds insult to injury, that we heard the report from Brian Windhorst that the Cleveland Cavaliers organization promised James Harden a long-term deal. Promised him that. So I know that there are so many Cavs fans that wake up today and say, walk back on the promise. Don't follow through on that promise. They made that promise knowing exactly who he was. They made that promise knowing that James Harden has a 17-year career and not a whole lot of postseason success to show for it. What we saw from James Harden, to your point last night, was absolutely nothing new. And what we saw from the Cleveland Cavaliers last night was either total exhaustion, or what we saw from them was either, total rust from going to a full 7-game series and back-to-back series, or it was just total and complete basketball mismanagement by Kenny Atkinson. I think it's probably fair to say it's a little bit of a combination of the three of them, but this series is done. This series is done. You do not give up a lead like the Cavs gave up last night and all of a sudden galvanize yourselves to punch your tickets to the NBA Finals. Not against a team like the Knicks and not a team that's as hot as New York is right now. Unlucky.
Especially, yeah. We got a little unlucky, quite honestly. I hate that. I hate every ounce of that answer.
What?
You don't get unlucky and blow a 22-point lead. You don't. To imply that this has fired me up. To imply that luck is the reason that you lost that game and not your own incompetence is irresponsible. To walk into this, and we can talk all day long about the fact that he had timeouts. Kenny Atkinson had timeouts he chose not to use. He said he wanted to keep the timeouts. They can be important late in the game and a challenge. An absolute asinine take from a head coach that had the opportunity to try and stop the bleeding and didn't. And even the players on the court were looking at the sidelines at times, anticipating, all right, this is where you take the timeout. We watching the game were anticipating the timeout. Commentators were anticipating the timeout. But apparently Kenny Atkinson thought he was the smartest person in the room and wouldn't use him, and that's fine. You're a head coach in an NBA team. That's fine. You know more basketball than I do. I understand that. That's going to be your clapback here. But do you? Because you didn't do this well. You certainly mismanaged this. And then to come out and say, we got a little unlucky. Like, luck had anything to do with the fact that you chose not to use the devices that are there for you to stop the bleeding. Luck had nothing to do with not using your timeouts. Luck had nothing to do with not trying to find a way to get your star player the ball in overtime. Luck had nothing to do with not being able to adjust defensively to get James Harden out of these isolated one-on-ones defensively when you knew he was a liability. Luck had nothing to do with why you lost this game. You lost this game because you didn't do a good enough job. Who is you? Everybody in the Cavs uniform, because you had an advantage early in this game. Man, you had that Garden crowd dead in the rights. You had that Garden crowd out of this thing. You had the Knicks looking around shell-shocked, and you let them back in. That's not luck. Yeah, a shooter's roll on a big Shamet shot from the outside, maybe that's a little bit lucky that's going in, but you earned that luck and that opportunity. That basket, that lucky basket doesn't matter if you don't mismanage every damn thing that got you up to that point. So even talking about Lady Luck when all you've done the entire fourth quarter is find a way to sabotage your team, to me is disrespectful to the result we saw last night. That was trash. The last 7 minutes was trash from the Cavaliers organization, top to bottom. And to imply that luck had anything to do with it, to even evoke the word, is disrespectful to the ownership that man needs to take in why his team lost.
It's his fault. If there's a blame pie for why the Cavs lost last night, I would say Kenny Atkinson gets more than 50%.
Yes.
Of course, James Harden gets a slice. I think everyone is culpable in that loss. Even Donovan Mitchell. When Donovan Mitchell had 29 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 6 steals, like it's a great stat line if you're just looking at the box score. But when the Knicks needed a prayer, when the Knicks needed a leader to kick everyone in the butt, when the Knicks needed somebody to carry the team on their shoulders, Jalen Brunson was like, I got you. I got you. This is my team. I'm the leader of this team. And he captained this ship that was the comeback for the Knicks last night. Donovan Mitchell couldn't do that. Donovan Mitchell, it felt like in the biggest moments, when they could finally put the final nail in the coffin of the Knicks and stun the Garden and do what I didn't think the Cavs had the capability of doing, and that was winning game 1. He didn't. Took his foot off the gas. That entire team took their foot off the gas. And I know, we can talk about how the Knicks haven't played a game in almost 2 weeks? And the Cavs have played 2 very long, very physical, and very emotional series. I know that we can talk about that. I know we can point the blame to that, at least for a little bit, especially when you're going into overtime. And when it went into overtime, this game was done. Like it was over. The Cavs gave up. But I don't want to keep hearing about that. Look, you are here. You are in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't want fatigue. I don't want lack of rest to be what you point to and saying, yeah, that's why we blew a 22-point lead. It's unacceptable.
There are moments. The Garden makes moments. Whether it's Reggie, whether it's Michael, whether it's Trae Young, the Garden makes moments. Last night, Jalen Brunson made plenty of moments going down the stretch in this game. And to your point, Donovan Mitchell had the opportunity. Donovan Mitchell had the opportunity late in the game when they absolutely needed it, when they had to find a way. Donovan Mitchell had the opportunity to have his Kobe moment in the Garden, to have his I will my team through this moment. And he didn't. Now, whether that's because of the way the plays were being called, or whether that's because of the dominant personality sometimes you have to be the star that leads your team, I don't know. But what I do know is that everybody failed in this process. And again, I'll go back all the way to the day that James Harden was acquired. And I cannot stress this enough. The Cleveland Cavaliers looked around and said, we are not a championship caliber team. And then when they had to do the math to figure out what would make them a championship caliber team, they decided that what they believed in was acquiring James Harden. And then they looked around with the lifetime of work that James Harden has in his career, and they made him a promise of an extension because they believed so much that he is the missing piece that they needed to make sure he was on board. They made promises to him because they looked at the entire body of work and said, it won't bite us in the ass. We'll be just fine. And last night, that decision, every one of those decisions last night gets questioned today because a huge part of why they lost is the very reason that they're here. They brought in James Harden to be the thing that gets them to a championship. And last night we were reminded that the one thing you can't rely on to win you a championship definitively is James Harden. We'll talk to Marcus Morris later in the show. I'm interested to get a player's perspective on the meltdown that happened. But coming up next, we got to get to the other side of this. While one conference is reeling, another is absolutely exploding, including that man is Wemby, the new face of the NBA.
Right back to work. TJ Edwards and Paxton DeLorette going blow for blow. Edwards. Oh, what a blitz pickup. Edwards to the end zone, and that is another touchdown. Third down. DeLorette throwing, coming back to make a great catch. Thomas Owens, the best receiver in the history of the franchise, just added another highlight to the reel.
I think for the Raptors, what did they learn here? They learned like they're in a great spot. And then Scotty Barnes, welcome. You have achieved stardom. Like that's what this series was for Scotty Barnes. He became a star. The dude hit clutch bucket after clutch bucket, made big plays as a playmaker as well. He was too big or too quick, depending on the guy he was being defended by. He was incredible.
The UFC has just given me so much, and I've met so many great fans around the world, different states and things like that, and I'm just blessed. And like I said, I'm glass half full all the time. Even when things are not going my way, I find a way to look at the bright side. I'm just happy to be here, man. And one fight at a time. When it's all said and done, I would love to have my last dance with the UFC.
Myler gets the snap. Myler extends the play, throws on the run, finds Bruce. Bruce lowers his head, reaches for the end zone and scores. Great pass by Myler, better effort by Arlen Bruce. And this Arizona offense is grooving. They retake the lead with 9 seconds left in the half.
Did we just witness the torch get passed? That, as we look at LeBron and Wemby, based on what we saw from Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, where Victor Wembanyama was an absolute beast in every possible way, and San Antonio takes down Oklahoma City. Caroline, what's it going to take? In your mind, what would make Wemby the actual face of the NBA right now?
He's already getting there. Right? He is an alien. He is just physically something we have never seen before. And combine that with what he's able to do on the court, he is something that we've never seen. I think the league wants him to be the face of the league. So he's already getting there. I think taking down the big bad Oklahoma City Thunder on the path to an NBA Finals gets him there even more. Like, you're building even more of a platform for Wemby to be truly the face of the NBA, especially if they do it with Victor Wembanyama having 3 more games like he had in Game 1. The clutchest 3 of all clutch threes, 40-plus points, 10-plus rebounds, a ridiculous stat line for Wemby in Game 1. So if he does it, and he carries this Spurs team past OKC to a finals, that does it as well. But I mean, let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's not, try and just do mental gymnastics, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You win a championship, Wemby's the face of the league.
I don't think that quite gets it there. And this is my logic.
Winning a championship? And year 2.
This is my logic. This is my logic, though. OKC won the championship last year.
3.
SGA is a 2-time MVP, and he's not the face of the league. Boston wins the championship the year before that with Brown and Tatum. Neither of them became the face of the league. The Nuggets win a championship. Jokic wins how many MVPs? He's not the face of the league. Like, there is this moment. Giannis wins a championship right at a time when it felt like Giannis was going to explode as a global sensation. Not the face of the league. I think to become sort of that guy that is truly, hey, I'm so popular that they're asking me to host Saturday Night Live. If you want to become the next Steph, the next LeBron, if you want to become truly like that guy, the icon for a generation, you got to go on a generational run. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. It just seems to be that that's what gets everybody to pay attention. If you are a champion one time, it's a great story. The world starts paying attention when you string together 3 or 4 championship series appearances, when you start just constantly becoming destination watching in the last series of June. I think that's what really takes. So I'm with you, like by the letter of the law, when you look at the way he looks and the way he plays the game and the freakish athleticism and the fact that it's like watching a monster nobody's ever seen. He's truly a Frankenstein. We always do this. Like, let's make the dream NBA player. You have this person's head and this person's body and this person's athleticism. I think if you put all of those things together, you might actually end up with ... Wemby. But in order for it to become this cultural phenomenon that an entire league globally is latched onto and everybody sells, and suddenly he's making movie appearances and TV appearances and he's on every late night talk show and the world is stopping to say, what's up with Wemby? I think you got to win a few championships in a row. You got to find yourself in the finals over and over and over again. Otherwise, you're just really, really, really good and a superstar, but you ain't Tiger until you win like Tiger.
Well, he doesn't have to be Tiger in order to be the face of the league, because it's his for the taking, I think. I mean, I'll push back on that and say Ant. We all thought that Ant was going to be the face of the league. He's never won a championship. Sure, he went to back-to-back Western Conference finals, but Ant was young. Ant had a fun personality that resonated with a lot of people. Ant has it. Like, he has this star power that you just can't really put into words. You just know it when someone has it, and he does, but he didn't want it. If Anthony Edwards wanted to be the face of the NBA, he would be, and he hasn't won a championship. You mentioned SGA, back-to-back MVP, won a championship last year, best player on the best team in the league. For whatever reason, though, I just don't think he resonates totally and completely with the broader set of just sports fans in general. You know, you bring up Jokic. I don't think Jokic cares about basketball enough in order to be the face of the NBA. He's got his horses. He even said, I don't want to come to the championship parade. I want to go home. So I think that just his personality, he doesn't want the, some could say honor, some could say burden of being the face of the NBA. Who else out there? Who else did you mention? Jason Tatum. You know, I think Brown and Tatum both being such massive pieces of that championship team. Jaylen Brown being the finals MVP maybe dilutes that a little bit whenever it's not just one focal point of a team, but several key cogs and several important pieces. But I think what sets Wemby apart from all of those guys is two things. He just is different. Physically, he just looks different. People can recognize Wemby because he is 7'5", 8-foot wingspan and hands the size of dinner plates. That alone sets him apart from the rest of the league. The second thing is Wemby has the motor. Wemby has the mentality that I think the NBA wants to be about. Wemby does everything right. Wemby elevates everyone around him. Wemby elevated the All-Star game because he played at 110%. Wemby's not too cool for school. The NBA has had this, and I think we're going away from it. But the NBA had for a while this mentality of, I'm too good for this. I'm a celebrity. I am too cool to try. Like, I am better than giving a regular season game in January my 100% attention and 100% effort. Wemby's not wired that way. Wemby is like, I care. I want to be MVP. I want Team World to win the All-Star game. Wemby just checks all of these boxes of the things that I think the NBA wants to become. So I think the NBA wants him to be the focal point of the league.
Yeah, I don't disagree that all, like, especially because he's a global personality. I think that's a huge part of what we're talking about here, right? Like, the fact that he is international matters so much. The problem is with the face of the league conversation is, and this is for every sport, you have to win so much to make regular, like, casuals care. Like, when we're talking about the face of the league, to me, we're talking about people that walk into a Starbucks in Topeka, Kansas that don't watch the NBA, but they turn around and they're like, oh my God, that's LeBron, right? Oh my God, that's KD. There are certain people that have been around so long. That's Steph. that you start to know them, because they're in so many commercials, they're in so many different advertisements, they're in movies, they're in random television shows, they're making cameos all over the place. When you reach that level of fame, that to me is when you become face of the league. And the hardest part about that is that we want to anoint the next guy or girl in each league to do that, but usually you have to accomplish something so otherworldly, whether it's a win streak or whether it's a phenomenal something, that you can't be denied. Everybody has to pay attention to you. So clearly, as we've talked about before, and this is an interesting parallel, like Caitlin Clark is not the best player in the WNBA. We all agree. You and I agree on that. She is by far the most popular player. She is one of the best players, and she is by far the most popular player. So when you become the face of the league, part of that is just a popularity index, right? So if you just look at the popularity score of NBA players, it's just going to take a lot of championships in order for anybody to really resonate like that. You can be the tallest person and the craziest athlete. You can win Defensive Player of the Year, but you're going to have to string together MVPs and championships to get somebody in Wall, South Dakota to stop when they're at Wall Drug and say, oh my God, isn't that Steph Curry? I think even now when Victor Wembanyama walks into the room, like you mentioned earlier, Anthony Edwards, I love Ant. I would love for Ant to be the face of the league because he's one of the most fun players to cover. I don't think anybody in Wall, South Dakota that doesn't watch the NBA has a damn clue who he is. And I don't think he's going to win enough games in Minnesota to ever be the face of the league. So part of this is, and that's why I come back to, Wemby has to be great. He has to be transcendent. I think he has the chance to do all of those things. But if he's continually knocked out of the playoffs by Oklahoma City, I don't know that he can really become that iconic, oh my God, like I think we have to see him raising the Larry O'Brien 47 feet tall because he is that tall over and over and over again, just to get the people that are in the middle of nowhere to care about what he does. Much like in the NFL version of this is Patrick Mahomes, right? Like once Patrick Mahomes starts doing commercials with Andy Reid where they're talking about the little nuggets, right? Like that's when that's when it transcends. But Mahomes didn't do that just because he was great. He did that because he won some Super Bowls.
But I think the difference here is, in the NFL, you have so much star power. Because you could call Patrick Mahomes the face of the league. I could also call Josh Allen the face of the league. I could also call Lamar Jackson the face of the league. I think I could also call Joe Burrow the face of the league. I think I could also call Jackson Smith and Jigba, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, faces of the league. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, faces of the league. They've been around a long time. A lot of them have ascended into celebrity category. So in the NFL, in order to be considered that guy above all the rest of the guys, you do have to go on a dynastic run like Patrick Mahomes did with the Chiefs, like Tom Brady did with the Patriots. I don't think you have to do that in the NBA. I think the NBA right now is in a great spot because there's not one face of the league because there are so many great players. It's not because of lack of talent. Like if we want to go down the list of guys that probably check all of the boxes to be faces of the league, Luka Doncic, leading scorer in the NBA, he plays in Los Angeles. Nikola Jokic, fun personality, ironically, won a championship. Jalen Brunson, he is the king of New York City. Normally, when you are the best player on the Knicks, you are a superstar. You are in contention for being the face of the league, but he just isn't. SGA, back-to-back MVP. Like there are so many guys that really check those boxes. Nobody's just kind of broken through it yet. So I think it's there for the taking, and I don't think he has to dethrone anyone for that. But I look if you can make the comparison to the W. You mentioned Caitlin Clark. She's the face of the league. Easy. I'm not even going to debate you on that. Asia Wilson's won 4 MVPs and 3 championships. So I don't think that accolades are everything.
That is fair. You're right. There's a fine line on all of it. There's a website that has a popularity score based on an algorithm that combines articles written, social media impressions, all of these things, and it lists the most famous contemporary sports personalities in America. Number 1 is LeBron James. That should surprise absolutely nobody. Steph Curry is number 7 out of all sports. So LeBron and Steph right near the top. KD number 12. Right. These are all not surprising to anybody. In fact, James Harden is number 23. There's only one other current NBA player that cracks the top 50 for most famous contemporary sports personalities by this rating. And that is Bronny James at number 21. Not a single other. So if your last name is James, there we go. We do have some news, by the way, in the NBA that we want to make sure we get you caught up on. Jason Kidd out in Dallas, will no longer be the head coach of the Mavs. We kind of presumed the Mavericks making some changes. Masai Ujiri has come in as the team president. We knew that Jason Kidd had applied for that job, wanted that position. Now we see instead of Kidd getting that job, Masai comes in and he's making wholesale changes. This isn't surprising, Caroline. You and I said when it happened, hey, you got to figure out who the best coach is for Cooper Flagg, and you got to make sure you stamp your organization moving forward.
And I think that we've heard that Jason Kidd wants more power. He wants to be a team president. He wants to be in the front office. I don't necessarily blame Masai Ujiri if he feels like Jason Kidd's, want for more influence and power and say in the organization just doesn't vibe with and doesn't match with the ecosystem and the culture that Masai Ujiri wants to build from the top all the way down to the bottom. So if Jason Kidd wants to go find that role somewhere else, go ahead and do it. It's just not going to be in Dallas. But this hire is absolutely positively critical for Cooper Flagg and his future. That he is the future of that organization. You don't dig yourself out of the Luka Doncic trade without Cooper Flagg becoming a superstar in this league. You have to find the right coach to unlock that in your young superstar.
And also this wipes clean more people that were even around the organization when Luka was traded. A true clean slate for the Mavericks. We'll get back to the NBA. We got plenty more to come, including Marcus Morris going to join us next hour. But coming up next, we'll get you caught up on news and notes across the NFL. Jordan Schultz going to join us next on Yahoo Sports Daily.
Quarterback, you want those guys that just go down hard or they chase the back.
Here comes Pius once again, gets through. The ball is hauled in off the dasher board by Marlon Cook Jr. A full-grown man reception there at the 15-yard line. Atkinson's two in motion. He'll run behind the block, now throw back to Marlon Cook Jr., and the ball's caught for a touchdown.
But I'm not going to lie, I was totally shocked. I was shocked that they actually pulled the trigger. I wondered if they would, again, still try to build around a huge talent in the WNBA, who's a huge star, one of the most popular players in the league, regardless of what you think about her play. They're going to be able to move games to State Farm Arena where the Hawks play now because of the Angel Reese effect. And I think she wanted an organization that had a clear vision of the future, and she gets that in Atlanta.
I loved Acuff all year. I mean, what an amazing college player.
Oh, yeah.
It's just his prototype in the NBA concerns me. But Acuff to me is the one that says, is he as good as Trae Young offensively? Probably not. Is he as bad defensively as Trae Young? Probably. And
you hope not.
There's a question about how playable Trae Young is, even with the skill set that he has.
There's the toss to Kerrigan. He is destroyed at the 2-yard line.
Yeah, and a great effort by Carson Taylor, defensive end. He makes Kerrigan really have to get wide here, and then good pursuit by the rest of the defense.
Arizona down by 3. Snap to Myler. There's the give to Clark. Open space, hurdles a defender, and he's tackled at the 17.
You see the NFL strength of schedule that is out there. Jordan Schultz posted that, giving you a little bit of a context around not just where your team falls in the strength of schedule conversation based on last year, but also based on win-loss total projections out of Vegas. It's a smart way to do it. Back on Yahoo Sports Daily with us now, NFL insider, host of the Schultz Report on YouTube. Always love hanging out with Jordan Schultz. So I saw your tweet about strength of schedule based on projected win totals. I threw it back out to the world because I think we should do more of it looking at that way. And what stood out to me is the Bengals have the third easiest schedule using that metric. So should we be maybe heaping more expectations on Cincinnati?
I think Cincinnati is one of the biggest sleepers in the whole league, not just the AFC. I said this last week as well. And it's not just because of the schedule. If you think about what they did in the offseason, specifically getting Dexter Lawrence from New York in a mega trade, that was one of the big weaknesses this defense had, was stopping the run. And also Dexter Lawrence gives you some pass rush as well. When he's right, and I think he will be right this year, he is arguably the best nose tackle in all of football. And he'll be motivated as well. He only has the 1-year deal now, so he'll want to get paid. He's 28 years old. He's as good as it gets. And then you think about a healthy Joe Burrow, obviously the offense, the receivers. I just, when I think about the Bengals and last season, everything that went wrong did go wrong. Like it could not have been more unlucky from an injury standpoint. They have a lot. There's a lot to like about that team. And then you talk about the schedule. Like it all lines up for them. And obviously health is a big factor, but if they're able to stay healthy, I think that's one of the real sleepers in the league.
I don't disagree in the slightest. I think there's a very real possibility they could win the division,
Yeah.
but they don't have a primetime game until week 10. So for a team that we feel like is going to be at the top of the league, for a team with two players that have ascended into celebrity superstar status in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, to not be on national TVs until week 10 feels like a miss to me, Jordan.
It's a huge miss. I mean, it's one of those things where when you realize that the Bengals, one of the marquee AFC teams, with, to your point, with a lot of star talent and megawatt power, when you realize that they don't have a primetime game until the second half of the season, it was one of the shocking things. Like I was really surprised that the Titans, for example, with Cam Ward in year 2, didn't have a primetime game. But the Bengals not having one till the second half of the season felt like a slap in the face, felt like an insult. And Joe Burrow is one of those guys that the league has really marketed. Jamar Chase, the league has really marketed. T. Higgins as well. I didn't get that. And, when the schedule comes out, like no one's ever going to be totally happy. There's always going to be teams that feel slighted. There's always going to be organizations that feel we got the short end of the stick. I felt, though, that the Bengals unfairly got the short end of the stick, not having a primetime game until week 10.
I think the league's just telling us they realize that the Bengals start out slow every year. They're going to suck in September and be great.
They're have started out slow.
Might be true.
You never know with this. All right, so one team that's going to have a tough season, no matter how we crack it, but particularly with the schedule, Arizona, the Cardinals, it looks like it's a brutal year incoming. And then you also have Jacoby Brissett at this point staying away because he wants a new deal. So what's the latest, and how do they resolve this?
So Brissett, that's an interesting storyline for a couple of reasons. One is Brissett, they were 1-7 with him as a starter, but he actually played relatively well. That roster is arguably the worst roster in football, and I think they're trying to upgrade it. But obviously, they Kyler Murray's not there, so Brissett, in theory, is the guy. Then again, they draft Carson Beck from Miami, originally Georgia, and that's a guy that I think in a lot of evaluators' minds a year ago would have been a first-round pick, has first-round type of talent. And if that is not worked out and Jacoby Brissett does not have a new deal, it would be really interesting to me if Carson Beck is essentially thrust into a starting role. I don't know if that's going to happen, and I would like to believe that they'll figure it out with Jacoby Brissett. But considering they draft Jeremiah Love, they draft Carson Beck, this is a roster that is really trying to rebuild from the very beginning. I mean, it is an interesting situation to monitor. I'm not saying that it's going to happen because I would like to believe that both sides will work it out, and then I think it would be beneficial for both sides to work out. And I'm not super confident, but I would say I'm confident they will. But if they don't, Carson Beck having to potentially start week 1 is one of the more intriguing storylines for me.
Yeah, I fear it may be a rough few months for the Arizona Cardinals. It will not be a rough few months, though, for Devon Achane. You reported that he just got the bag, and what we know about record-setting contracts is it resets the market. So what does this contract mean for the future of Bijan Robinson, of Jahmyr Gibbs, and some of these other running backs that'll be due new deals?
Yeah, so Achane and Brees Hall both getting new deals. Where they got them, when they got them, is really good news for both Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. I think both of those guys are going to come in well into the 20s potentially, and both of those guys are are very well deserving. You're talking about legitimate game breaking players who are both 24 years old, Gibbs and Robinson. I think maybe even 23 for Bijan. And that's the type of, like, when you consider Detroit last season did not have a great year. Gibbs, though, was one of the best players in football. You consider Atlanta, new regime. I think one of the more interesting parts about the Falcons with Bijan is they just hired a new contract negotiator. I don't know how that's going to impact it from a timing standpoint. And I've always felt like Gibbs, out of the four, Hall, Achane, Bijan, and Gibbs, I always felt like Gibbs was probably going to go last. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but for sure, the Achane and Hall deals are good news from a Gibbs and Robinson standpoint. And again, I think both those guys will come in well above $20 million a year.
Jordan, let me nerd out on sports media for a second, because you broke that news. And it's such a competitive market with Shefty and Ian and everybody out there.
Mm-hmm.
For you as an insider, how does it feel when you're able to beat everybody to the punch? And what's that life really like when you get something? Because we always say, like, insiders, slow down, slow down, slow down. But you get it. You know you've got it. What's that whole moment like for you?
It's every moment has its own unique entity in many ways, Jason, because you don't really know how it's going to go down until it does. I would say, too, that there's so much built-in pressure and sweat equity that you put in from a relationship standpoint to try and get news. I used to actually put more pressure on myself the first couple years. I think this is now year 4 for me doing this, and I realized that you can try to be as prepared as possible, but in many respects, that preparation doesn't always matter because, to your point, it is incredibly competitive. Obviously, when you get that text or that call, it is very exciting, and you have to go fast because you know how good everyone else is and that they're all chasing the same stories, and it's sometimes talking to the same people. So there's not a whole lot of room to go to try and not go fast. It's incredibly competitive, and now, like, to your point, I'm always very appreciative of it, but I also know that, like, it's such a fleeting business because news is so episodic. And now, you're getting into more extension season. It's not really free agent season anymore. It's really episodic. You could have a bang where you get a couple in a day and then nothing happens for 2 weeks. And so that makes your ability to stay connected to the phone that much more important. And me having, like, severe ADD, it's hard for me to always want to be connected to the phone. And you try to find that balance. It's hard for me too, like being a young dad. So there are times where I put the phone away on purpose, and I have missed stories because of it. And it's just a reality that I've had to, I guess, accept.
It's always a something season in the
True,
NFL. If
for
it's not
sure.
free agency season, it's contract
Yes.
season, it's football
Schedule,
season, it's talking
yes.
season,
I know.
schedule, draft, all of the above. It's a 365-day year
It is.
operation. And so is your job and our jobs as well. But I know it is a 365-day year operation to be checking in on what's new with
Yes.
Malik Neighbors in New York.
Yes.
What is the latest that you have heard on the second surgery? How concerned should Giants fans be?
I was a little more concerned when I had heard, and I think a lot of people had heard, that they were, seriously in the Jordan Tyson business, potentially as high as 5, that the Giants had a lot of interest in him, the receiver out of Arizona State, who ends up going 8 to New Orleans. And that was just my original thought, was if they're really interested in Jordan Tyson, what does that mean for Malik Neighbors? And I checked in on it, and I know it's been reported on now. There's really not a whole lot of concern inside that building when it comes to his knee. Anytime you have a catastrophic knee injury, especially as a receiver or as a running back, a guy that has to cut a lot, it's going to be a concern. But considering his age and the fact that they internally are not at all worried in terms of week 1, I think that's a really good sign. Obviously, you want to have a guy be able to get the reps, especially in camp in year 2 with Jackson Dart. And I'm still not sure exactly when he'll be able to be 100% or close to it in terms of getting the reps in camp. But I've asked now twice in the last couple weeks about Malik Neighbors and that knee and week 1. And both times I've been told that there's no concern. So I guess that's a really good thing for the Giants.
While we're on wide receivers, before we get you out of here, Brandon Ayuk seems to be ever the story. What's the latest and how does it resolve?
I would say that's probably the weirdest story that I've followed because it's been going on now for so long, Jason. It feels like with Brandon Ayuk, and you see some of these photos and just, there's videos, and it just seems like an endless cycle of drama. Obviously, he's not in the building, and they don't really have to do anything right now, and it's been like that for a while. I remember asking someone in that building, hey, do you think you'll trade him during the draft? And it's been the same answer, like maybe, probably not, who knows. That's what it's felt like. He won't be there next season, and at some point you'd have to assume that he's probably released because everyone knows he's not going to be there. So why would you trade for him? There's an obvious connection to Washington because of Jaden Daniels in Arizona State and that connection, but I'm still not convinced that that's going to happen either. We really don't know also what type of shape Brandon Ayuk is in. And the fact that he didn't really play last season is obviously a red flag. He was a great receiver 2-3 years ago. He was an all-pro caliber receiver. He was excellent. He's really a terrific player. But until we see what type of shape he's in and how motivated he is to play football, it's hard to peg him to a destination. The only thing we really know definitively, Jason, is that he won't be a 49er next season.
You guys can follow him on Twitter, X @Schultz_report. And then, of course, check out the Schultz Report on YouTube. Jordan, always love having you on, my friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
It's my pleasure. I really appreciate you. Have a great day.
Great stuff as always from Jordan. Great dude, great insider. In the meantime, we're getting great hockey. We'll tell you a little bit about the Stanley Cup Conference Finals, what you need to know about the drama coming up next.
Who's a better promoter, him or Eddie?
Very different. I mean, Dana. I think in terms
Why?
of they run a business at UFC. They have a model. You could complain about it. You could say it's anti-fighter, but they know what they're doing. I don't think Eddie's going away. Do I think Dana has a smarter, more effective, more intelligent, better capitalized, better television connected thing going on than Eddie does? It's not even a question.
Should AJ Bonsa be a lock for the number 1 pick going to the Washington Wizards? What do you think, Chad?
He's been my favorite player to watch really all year. I love what AJ brings to the table and the upside. I think he's got the combination of a can't miss scorer who could just ultimately be, one of the elite top 5 players in the NBA. And I just don't think the Wizards take the risk. To me, he's the clear number 1 guy.
And the Jets with Darren Mucci as GM feel like they are figuring it out. Now, can Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, stay out of the way and let this thing progress? Does Aaron Glenn actually have the goods as head coach? I don't know that. But I think Geno Smith was a really sound signing. And I really do think, dodging lightning bolts here, the Jets could surprise people this year and be a lot better than the team you've been watching the last 15 years during this historic playoff drought.
Uh-oh, ball's up, ball's out. Tucson picks it up. We could have a scoop and score. Zachariah Twardowski, touchdown, Sugar Skulls, and just like that, Tucson right back in it. The scoop and score for the Sugar Skulls. I mean, what a moment for this young man in his first career start.
I'm just not going to waste $100 million just because somebody wants to write an article calling me cheap. That is the response that maybe sends people the wrong way. Tom Dundon, the owner of the Trailblazers, and there's been plenty of change. And part of the cheap conversation comes from, the way they check out of hotels, all of these things that we've been talking about. Other teams might give a little bit of more grace on that. He wants everybody out at a certain time. He's gone on a podcast to explain why he stands by that decision, saying he's not going to waste that money. That's an that was on the Game Over podcast, doubling down on his decision. He's drawn a lot of criticism. Many people slaying him for the cost-saving measures. And yesterday, we learned that around 70 people within the Trailblazers organization were laid off. So what do we make of this from somebody that has been nicknamed El Cheapo, that is running his team like a business?
Let me just say, that is a devastating nickname. If anybody ever called me El Cheapo, I would have to reevaluate some things. Look, if he stands by it, great. If you're going to do it, stand on it. But nobody is calling him cheap because he just won't spend $100 million and people are just writing articles to slander him. It's because there's a real and legitimate concern when you own a professional sports organization that you're not going to be willing to spend the money, and you have to spend money in order to be competitive. Now, the late checkouts and the, doing away with one of the mascots and not getting the Team masseuse a hotel room, whatever those things are, they're dumb and it's stupid and it's a silly way to save money. But they're not drastic, right? It's not the end of the world if you have to be in the hotel lobby at 11 instead of noon. But 70 people losing their jobs and their livelihoods, potentially having to uproot their families and move to find a new job, like 70 employees, that's a lot. And I understand cost-cutting measures, and I understand that's a reality for a lot of companies, not just professional sports organizations, but everyone everywhere. Like, that's an unfortunate reality of, the current environment or, employment climate that we're in. My goodness, it's hard to find words today. Employment climate that we're in. But it's just unfortunate that these people, innocent people that are just trying to make a living, now won't have their livelihoods because somebody's trying to save a buck. A billionaire is trying to save a buck.
Yeah, and this is the hardest part about where modern sports fandom has grown to, because the more we get private equity ownership in teams, the more big companies come in, the more that we have dozens of owners on every team, the less it becomes about anything passionate, the more it becomes a business. And that's what it is. I mean, sports is a business. And I say this as somebody that was laid off by ESPN. So I want to say very clearly, I understand what it's like to read in the news one day that, a superstar just got a massive new contract, and as a result, I lost mine. I understand exactly how this feels. It's all business, though. That's the thing that I think we have to sort of recalibrate to. At some point, no matter what you do for a living, unfortunately, in the modern society, we're all just a number on a spreadsheet. There will come a day where Yahoo turns around and decides that I'm on the wrong side of that number, and that will be the end of my time at Yahoo. Like, that's the way these things work, and that's callous. I understand that. It's not jaded. It's just real. I toured in a band that used to get lectures from the management company about how long we kept our battery packs on for our electronics, for our instruments, because batteries cost money, right? So at some point, everything is a bottom line business. And I think what he's doing right now is he's looking at sports as a bottom line business. And that feels icky to so many of us that love our favorite team, and we want our favorite team to live in luxury. And we look around and we say, but he's a billionaire. Well, part of the reason he's a billionaire is because he doesn't waste millions. You have to make billions to be a billionaire, which means you have to be willing to hold on to a bunch of it. Rich people don't get rich by accident more often than not. So to me, I just think this is part of the modern landscape of what sports are becoming. An era ago, a generation ago, we could look at sports ownership for teams, and it felt like, man, there was this great goal of having somebody that's a lifelong diehard fan of their team eventually they win the lottery and they can buy their team. Well, now there's so limited opportunities to buy teams, and valuations have gotten so grotesquely high that the only way teams are going to be sold are to people that have made money that is just incomprehensible. And that means they're going to run everything like a business. I never want to see people get laid off, but I'm not surprised to see people get laid off because nobody within the Trailblazers organization right now is thinking about the human aspect of it. They're just looking at spreadsheets and saying, how do we make our business more profitable, which is inevitably what will happen to every sports team across the landscape. So the other side of it is, while we want to sit here and critique this from a Trailblazers standpoint, he also owns the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes are not good. They're great. They're spectacular. He's doing the same things with the Carolina Hurricanes. It's not that he's over here letting them live a life of luxury and they're sitting here owning private islands in Hawaii while the Trailblazers are the redheaded stepchild. Like, that's not the reality of what we're getting here. I just think that his method is to lower cost and make sure that he puts the right people in the right places, which is working for a Carolina team that looks right now like they're destined for greatness. And the NHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Stanley Cup conference finals that we're getting right now, we're about to get the Canes taking on Montreal in the Eastern Conference final Thursday night in Raleigh. Carolina has a massive rest advantage. To give you an idea of how good Carolina is right now, just to make this clear, they've had 12 days off between games. That's the longest layoff in NHL playoff history. They've played 8 times in the last 36 days. 8 games in the last 36 days. Why? Because they're kicking the snot out of everybody. So I want to sit here and I want to destroy ownership for the way they're doing it. But then I'm looking at it saying it's working, Caroline, in the NHL, because Carolina's damn good.
Well, there's also several reasons why a team can be damn good. And you're right. I don't think anybody in the East is beating Carolina. But it could be, okay, this team spends the most money, so they're the best team. But that's not the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes are 27th of 32 in the NHL in total payroll. The Carolina Hurricanes just do more with less than a lot of other teams, if not every other team in the National Hockey League. Sebastian Aho is their highest paid player. Also fair to say, one of their best players, a top player, and a fan favorite in that franchise. He makes $9.75 million. It is not wild to see $11 million, $12 million contracts, 10 by 10, 10 years, $10 million a year is kind of the popular current going contract in the current hockey market for some of the top players in the league. Sebastian Aho at 9.75 makes just a hair underneath that. So it's not because Tom Dundon is investing all of this money in the Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes are just, outspending everybody else in the NHL, and that's the reason why they're probably going to find themselves in the Stanley Cup Finals. No, it's just because they do more with less, and they have a low payroll and have exceeded expectations based on the amount of money that they have invested into their team.
You are not wrong about that. By the way, while we're talking about the Stanley Cup, the Western Conference Final is going to give us Colorado taking on the Golden Knights. In fairness, have an entire basement full of Vegas Golden Knights Stanley Cup championship gear, so I will admit my bias here. But Golden Knights are under fire. They got in trouble when they won their last series because they weren't available for media availability afterwards. Not the first time that they've had this issue, and that trouble has now continued to another story. Remember that the win that they had in the Stanley Cup had Bruce Cassidy as their coach at the time. Cassidy was relieved of his head coaching duties right before the playoffs started, something that we were stunned by on this show. But he's still under contract through next season. Vegas has reportedly blocked their rivals, the Kings and the Oilers, from interviewing him. So they told him he can't go to work for them anymore, but they're also not letting him interview with their rivals. What do we think of this?
I think that's so scummy. I think that is wrong on behalf of the Vegas franchise. You broke up with him. Now he gets to go talk to other people. That's like whenever you break up with somebody in a relationship and they're like, well, you can't talk to this person. You can't get in a new relationship. Why not? You broke up with them. And look, yeah, I know that Vegas is paying him. So a lot of people might look at it and say, enjoy and sit back and collect your checks and kick your feet up and take a couple of years off. I don't think he wants to do that. So you decided to fire him. You parted ways with him. Now let him go find another job. If you are so scared of him being able to get, Edmonton or any of these other teams, over the hump, if you think that he can do that, you shouldn't have fired him. And if you believe that he was not the guy to get you over the hump, then you shouldn't be scared of what he could do potentially for another team in the league. So I don't think that's very good business on behalf of the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think it's a really bad look.
I will always, I cannot speak to being a coach, but I can speak again to being laid off with a guaranteed contract. It happened to me at ESPN. Many people don't realize this, but when you root for your favorite person at ESPN, or your least favorite person at ESPN to get laid off, what you don't know is their contracts are fully guaranteed. So the day that I got laid off, ESPN could have required that I sat and not worked. In fact, they did require of other people, I won't name names, that they weren't able to work until their contracts were fully done. So they did that to people. I am forever thankful to Jimmy Pitero at ESPN, who immediately said, hey, no, if you want to work, we'll give you that opportunity to go work, because I didn't want to sit around for what I had left on my contract, almost 2 years, sit around for 2 years. And by the time I got to work again, the game might have passed me by. Nobody would remember what I did, all of these things. That was my real anxiety during this process. I have lived a very similar situation to what we're talking about right here. I think it's absolutely disgusting for anybody to block somebody's opportunity to work. At this point, you decided you don't want him to be your coach anymore. And even as a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights, I can say, you made that decision. Now live with that decision. Let the man go work wherever he wants to, and don't be afraid of what he can do somewhere else. We'll keep you updated on the Stanley Cup, especially if Vegas wins. I'm not going to lie about that. But coming up next, we got to get some thoughts on a massive, massive comeback last night from somebody that knows better than anybody. Marcus Morris is going to join us live. We'll get his thoughts on what we saw in New York.
Right back to work. TJ Edwards and Paxton DeLorette going blow for blow. Edwards, oh, what a blitz pickup. Edwards to the end zone, and that is another touchdown. Third down, DeLorette throwing, coming back to make a great catch. Thomas Owens, the best receiver in the history of the franchise, just added another highlight to the reel.
I think for the Raptors, what did they learn here? They learned like they're in a great spot. And then Scotty Barnes, welcome. You have achieved stardom. Like that's what this series was for Scotty Barnes. He became a star. The dude hit clutch bucket after clutch bucket, made big plays as a playmaker as well. He was too big or too quick, depending on the guy he was being defended by. He was incredible.
The UFC has just given me so much. And I've met so many great fans around the world, different states and things like that. And I'm just blessed. And like I said, I'm glass half full all the time. Even when things are not going my way, I find a way to look at the bright side. I'm just happy to be here, man. And one fight at a time, when it's all said and done, I would love to have my last dance with the UFC.
Myler gets the snap. Myler extends the play, throws on the run, finds Bruce. Bruce lowers his head, reaches for the end zone and scores. Great pass by Myler, better effort by Arlen Bruce. And this Arizona offense is grooving. They retake the lead with 9 seconds left in the half.
I'm a big believer in character and leadership, and I'm looking for a person that embodies those things. That's Bob Myers and the Sixers talking about Darryl Morey's replacement. I'm excited to talk to my buddy Marcus Morris because he knows this league inside and out. 13-year NBA vet, former Sixer, right? So you can follow him on YouTube at the Morris Code 2. Marcus, you know Darryl Morey. You started your career in Houston with him as the GM. Played in Philly near the end of your career. So when you hear Morey say that, because what I think of when I hear Darryl Morey is Harden v. Morey, right? So when you hear Morey say, when you hear those things about Morey, what do you make of the fact that he's no longer with the Sixers?
I'm not here to, talk about Darryl and his time. I think, being there for that short stint, I just felt like they really did need new leadership. I think that the stuff that happened with Harden kind of sprinkled over into the team. You don't necessarily want to bring that to the forefront of like, that's the reason why they lost, right? But I thought even last year he was on the block. I thought it was a courtesy thing to give him another year because he assembled that team, right? He put that team together to see what would the outcome be. But I just think it was overdue, man. I think Philly just need new leadership. I think Bob Myers hit it right on the nose.
So what does Bob Myers need to be looking for? Oh, sorry, Caroline. I didn't know you were back. There we go. Caroline, go ahead.
Hi. Having some camera issues.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. Happy to have you on. It was fascinating to me, Marcus, when Darryl Morey was fired. The response was so divided. Some people thought, oh my gosh, Darryl Morey is this basketball savant. How do you fire a guy like that? And then other people thought, okay, good riddance, it's past time. Why is that? Why was there such a difference in response from his firing?
I think that's just the landscape of the sport, right? Like, Darryl Morey is not I wouldn't say a terrible GM. I would more say he was on the business side of trying to sell tickets and get people to fill seats. He was able to get, BJ Ashcombe, which I thought was big for the city of Philadelphia. But, I just, for having, Maxey and having Embiid and having Paul George, I just think that the team like really didn't, put out the best. I would say the best. I wouldn't say the best product because when you talk about names, like it's star-studded, right? You have three guys that has a chance to be Hall of Famers, but I just feel like when he's traded, and this is my honest opinion, when he ended up trading the kid to Oklahoma City, I felt like that was like a big turning point for the team. Just having scoring off the bench, and it didn't seem like it was a basketball decision. So, obviously Darryl Morey is, a good dude. I'll be on the fence of saying that, because I want to be politically correct. But in other words, like I just thought that Philly needed new leadership.
All right, so let's not be politically correct and look at what we saw last night. I gotta get to last night, right? Like, so for you as a player, let's just start with the very basic. Yeah. You see a 22-point collapse in the last 7 minutes. Whose fault is it?
Two things I see with Cleveland. They don't have really good leadership far as player-wise, right? Like if you look at the James Harden team and the Donovan Mitchell team, they always had a guy on the bench somewhere where he was the vocal leader, where you call a timeout and you could see that guy showing passion and kind of bringing the team together. That's what I think that Cleveland is missing anyway, right? But I can't put that on coaching. You have two guys that's going to be Hall of Famers. At some point, up 22, okay, now it dwindled down to 15. Okay, now it dwindled down to 10. Them two guys got to be able to settle the team down to get quality shots and make sure we have quality possessions. I think that's the big thing that they were missing. And I'm not going to put this on coaching. As a player, we always want to say, well, he could have called better plays, but he's not on the court, right? If I got Donovan Mitchell and James Harden on the court with a 20-point lead, I feel good about that. I feel great about that. So, when I'm saying pointing fingers, I'm saying that's the thing where our two superstars has to be in the room together and take ownership and say, yo, this was our fault, man. We can't allow our team to crumble like that up 20 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, are we serious? It's the Eastern Conference Finals. But not only them, like it hasn't just been Cleveland that's been crumbling. Cleveland was up 3-2 against Detroit on a closeout game and lost by 20. Detroit, game 7, goes into Detroit and lose by 20. So it's like I'm not even surprised just the way the basketball has been going, the way the playoffs been going, that they actually gave up this lead.
So take me into this locker room then, Marcus, because you've been in plenty of these locker rooms throughout your career. How do you come back from this? You just had 2 long, physical 7-game series. You just blew a 22-point lead on the road. How do you come back in game 2 with the fire that you need to take down this Knicks team?
Personally, again, you have to have that leadership in the locker room to be like, listen, we effed this up and, we thought we had this one in the bag, but New York is supposed to win at home, right? New York has been playing really well in these playoffs. So, I mean, you were kind of talking to that. I know it's going to be a hard pill to swallow, but if we dwell on this, it can get even worse, right? Like, yes, we lost. Yes, it's one of the worst losses in history in the playoffs. Like, we all know that, it's a lot of media stuff being said. But, again, you have 2 Hall of Fame guys that had to take ownership of this and stand in front of the team and say, hey, we effed this up, but we got to move on and get to the next game and continue to play the same style of basketball up until the last 7 minutes, because they're a good team, right? They have really good players. They have a really well-rounded organization and a really good coach. So you kind of got to just throw this in the trash can, light a match, and say, hey, let's get to the next one. And we understand that we can beat this team if we, take care of the ball and just close out games.
Yeah, Marcus, you and I know each other well. Like, I love talking to former players because you can solve the equation I can't solve, right? When you are late in that game And every time they're getting Harden in an ISO of some sort, and every time they're winning that ISO battle, who's responsible for making sure that doesn't happen anymore?
It has to be coaching. First of all, the first game is always a fill-out game. You kind of always want to see like what's the dynamic of the offense and who they're going to attack. I don't think it's a secret. We all know that, most teams are going to attack James Harden. Cade Cunningham just did it in the Detroit series. Scotty Barnes was trying to do it a lot in the Toronto series. So I don't think that's a secret, right? Like you have to be, you have to find out unique ways. And I think Kenny Atkinson is a really good coach. And I think he will find it out. But you have to find out unique ways to send double teams and understand that you're going to have to give up something. Like this is when you have James Harden on the team, you have Donovan Mitchell on the team. Like defensively, you have to understand you're going to give up something. You have two big 7-footers in the back that's protecting the rim, and I think that they were giving a lot of open shots to Josh Hart, but he was doing a good job of either knocking down the three or making a never effort to get into the paint to where you got to play the closeout game. But also Jalen Brunson went crazy at the end. Like you got to take your hat off to him because he made some really timely shots at the end that sometimes, okay, even that it was James Harden, it still was timely shots from a pro. So, I mean, I think they still have to find unique ways to protect James in the defensive side. But I'm up 20 with 7 minutes to go. I've done some things right this entire game. I just had to buckle down for 3 out of those 7 minutes to make sure we win those games. So I went over panic about James Harden defensive struggle because this is stuff that's already known. Every team in the league understand this. I would just, go back to those last 7 minutes and figure out what went wrong and dissect that situation and move forward.
I want to stick on James Harden for a second. Last night, he had more turnovers than made shots. That's the 6th time that's happened this postseason. It's not like James Harden has a long history of successful playoff performances. Brian Windhorst reported that the Cavs essentially promised James Harden a new deal. After last night, and if the Cavs lose this series in part because James Harden can't elevate his play, should they walk back that promise?
I got to walk a fine line right here. James Harden left, the Clippers, at a really, from what we've seen in the league at a time where they were actually playing well, right? So it had to be something where he had to get up and relocate being home to come to Cleveland to push him over the hump because, to be honest, without James Harden, I don't think Cleveland is in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you have to kind of dial that back as well. Like, yes, he hasn't been playing well, but he's another guy that you can get the ball to and take out of Donovan Mitchell's hand because right now they are the only 2 guys that's creating for everybody else. It's a tricky game, but I'm a man of my word, and if you give a promise, you have to abide by that. I think that James has already been through that with Darryl Morey, so I think there was maybe a deeper conversation that they made sure that this has to happen. And I don't think that, I've been around them guys in Cleveland. And I think they're really trustworthy guys. So I think it still would, follow their word. And, hopefully, like I said, they've made it this far. And without James, they wouldn't be here. So you got to kind of take that in consideration as well.
If they decided not to honor that promise at any point with Harden, what does that do to the way players see the organization?
It will definitely have a lot of backlash. In this game right now, everybody's kind of, especially on the superstar side, right? Like you when you give your word to a guy that's been around the league that long, that's accomplished as he is, for other guys later in their career, I think that it definitely would be, some eyebrows raised. And James Harden, I think, who he is, he will come out and speak about that. So, I wouldn't want to, if I'm Cleveland, being in Cleveland, no one really wants to go to Cleveland. I wouldn't mess my reputation up like that to be like, we're not honoring our word, right? Like I already got to live in Cleveland, right? Like that's enough. You know what I mean? That's no knock to Cleveland. Like that's enough living in Cleveland. But now, like, I don't know how the organization is going to be. Like, that's like, you can't play both sides of that, right? Like, you have to stand on something. And I love Cleveland. Like, when I was there, That's one of the best organizations I played for in my time, and it was a small stint. So, I mean, I don't see them guys being that type of way of going back on their word.
You say that's no knock to Cleveland. I think it might be just like a little bit of a knock to Cleveland.
I mean, I think they know that though. They know that though. It's not a secret. Come on, man. They know that. You know, during the summertime it's beautiful, but you know, I don't know two people that want to be in Cleveland. So
it's no paradise.
I think they have to stand on their word at some point. Yeah.
I want to look at the other side of this matchup quickly because you brought up Jalen Brunson. Went absolutely crazy at the end of that game. 38 points. I mean, he is the leader of this Knicks team. He is the focal point of the Knicks. Normally, when you are that guy in New York City, you are a superstar in the league. I don't feel like Jalen Brunson has made that ascension into just casual basketball fans or casual sports fans. He's not the face of the NBA. Why?
I think that's a Jalen Brunson thing. Like, I think Jalen Brunson cares about the sport of basketball to the point where he's not really too worried about like being on every commercial and, you know, like it takes a type of branded guy, it takes a type of, you know, superstar caliber guy off the court to kind of get branded as the face of the league. I look at Jalen Brunson as like a superstar and, you know, an underrated superstar, but everyone knows he can hoop inside the league, right? I don't think that him being you know, the face of the league means anything to him. Like when LeBron is the face of the league, like LeBron makes it a point of being the face of the league. When guys are like stepping into the role, they make it a point. I think Jalen just really cares about basketball. I think he really cares about his friends. I really think he cares about the organization. Look, he took less money to get guys over there to make sure everyone's taken care of. I just feel like for him, it's about winning and doing something that never happened in New York for a long time, and it's not really about him being the face of the league.
Marcus, I know we got to let you go, but now that we've seen one game out of this, do you believe that Cleveland can actually come back and win this series?
I love Cleveland. I love the fans. I don't think so. Like, I don't even think it was a comeback and win. Like, I never had him winning. But I like Cleveland. Like, I think James Harden's a great player. I think Donovan Mitchell's a great player. They're good friends of mine. I just think that the way New York have approached this, you know, postseason after Game 4 against it's on the tip of my tongue, but after Game 4 they played in the first series, I seen a switch hit, and I was like, okay, yeah, New York they're understanding the mission. You know, they're understanding what's going on. OG even goes out for a game, 2 games, and they dominate. So it's just like, you know how hard that is to go into Philadelphia during playoffs and win by 20? Like, I think they were up 40-something at a point. And I was like, yo, in the playoffs, they're dialed in, they're moving the ball, they're cutting. You know, Cat was amazing. Playing the, you know, the kind of that point center role in the first series against the Sixers. I think he's going to have another role in this one where he can figure out where to get in. But I just think that, you know, Mike Brown has some guys playing well. Yesterday, I will say that, you know, they were supposed to lose that game, but just the landscape of the sport and what I'm seeing from the Knicks, I had them beating Cleveland. You know, that's just my personal opinion. And my brother feels the same. So we kind of watching this and seeing it like, the Knicks, they're playing really well. But I don't care who wins on the East. Somebody on the West is going to win the championship. And I'm stamping that right now.
That's one of the best in the business. Marcus, you know, we love you, brother. Appreciate you coming on. Got to come on, hang out with us again. Appreciate you, my friend. Be well.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks,
Great
Marcus.
stuff from Marcus Morris. Follow him. Check out the show. He's always badass. All right, coming up, speaking of badasses, is Mendoza already won? We'll tell you about it.
As a quarterback, you want those guys that just go down hard or they chase the back.
Here comes Pius once again, gets through. The ball is hauled in off the dasher board by Marlon Cook Jr. A full-grown man reception there at the 15-yard line. Atkinson's 2 in motion. He'll run behind the block, now throw back to Marlon Cook Jr., and the ball's caught for a touchdown.
but I'm not going to lie, I was totally shocked. I was shocked that they actually pulled the trigger. I wondered if they would, again, still try to build around a huge talent in the WNBA who's a huge star, one of the most popular players in the league, regardless of what you think about her play. They're going to be able to move games to State Farm Arena where the Hawks play now because of the Angel Reese effect. And I think she wanted an organization that had a clear vision of the future, and she gets that in Atlanta.
I loved Acuff all year. I mean, what an amazing college player.
Oh, yeah.
It's just his prototype in the NBA concerns me. But Acuff to me is the one that says, is he as good as Trae Young offensively? Probably not. Is he as bad defensively as Trae Young? Probably. And
you hope not.
There's a question about how playable Trae Young is, even with the skill set that he has.
There's the toss to Kerrigan. He is destroyed at the 2-yard line.
Yeah, and a great effort by Carson Taylor, defensive end. He makes Kerrigan really have to get wide here, and then good pursuit by the rest of the defense.
Arizona down by 3. Snap to Myler. There's the give to Clark. Open space, hurdles a defender, and he's tackled at the 17.
The Raiders offensive coordinator was asked about Fernando Mendoza, and he said he's getting asked so many questions by his rookie quarterback that it has him evaluating everything, which created conversation yesterday as we're trying to figure out just how great Fernando Mendoza can be. And Caroline, this is the funny thing. You and I talk a lot about the draft, and you mention all the time that we reach this point where it's lion season. We all know Cruton season. Like, we got these different seasons. This is the season of hype, right? Like, when you hear the offensive coordinator come out and say, oh man, he's asking me so many questions about the why that I'm asking myself questions. The next time I hear an offensive coordinator about the first overall pick come out and say, man, so far it kind of sucks, but we'll see where it goes. Like, what else do we expect the offensive coordinator to be saying? Come on.
I mean, of course, Fernando Mendoza, a rookie in the NFL who hasn't even played a snap of in-game action, who hasn't even gone through training camp yet, is all of a sudden teaching these coaches who have been in the league for a decade plus something new. Of course, he is so smart that he's just opening up a whole new football world to them. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? Because you say it's lying season or, draft season. This is smoke blowing season. This is everything is going to be fine season. Because there are so many things that you can just ignore right now because everything's great. Everything's wonderful. It's all sunshine and rainbows and butterflies because nobody's lost a game yet. Now, I want to clarify something here. This is not an anti-Fernando Mendoza statement. I love Fernando Mendoza, the player, the person. He is such a smart guy, and I do think he has what it takes to be the savior of the Raiders organization. But let's not kid ourselves here. He is not responsible for making all of these coaches rethink everything differently, okay? I think that they just want to boost the confidence of their young quarterback and get all of those good storylines and good headlines out there whenever there is no scoreboard and there's no win-loss record. I remember when I was doing radio in Nashville, I was reading this article, and we talked a lot on my radio show about this article on The Athletic. When Matt Ryan came to the Indianapolis Colts, this was like a Disneyland, sugar plum and rainbows kind of article. They were saying Matt Ryan gets to the facility at 5:30 in the morning to work out. And he's already, he's worked out and gone through film before a lot of people even get in the building. So what? That's what a quarterback's supposed to do. I think a lot of quarterbacks probably get in the building in the 5 a.m. hour and have worked out and looked at film before a lot of other people that work in the organization even get in the building. He makes $50 million a year. He better be doing those things. So I think it's just this time of year, everybody wants to just feel good about themselves, and it's a good time to get good publicity out there. Again, not an anti-Fernando Mendoza statement. I love the kid. I'm excited to watch the kid, but let's not kid ourselves.
My God, I'm getting a Fernando Mendoza jersey, and the minute he signs it, it will go back here next to my Max Crosby jersey. I want Fernando Mendoza to be exactly what they say here. They call him a sponge, and I do think coaches are talking to players. what they're doing here is they're letting him know, we encourage this. We love this. This is one of your strengths. And I believe when I get asked, I was at a random hotel bar the other night after our IFL Cup game. And as I walked up wearing a Raiders t-shirt, first thing somebody says, what do you think of Mendoza? Like, my answer to this is always the same. I think he's obsessed with football knowledge, and that's going to be his superpower. And these quotes are indicative of that. That being said, all I'm saying is this. I love the concept of going to a psychic and having a psychic tell me everything that's going to happen in my life. But the one thing that I want to do before I go see a psychic is I want to take my most dumpster fire friend to that psychic first. Let him go in, and when he comes out of the room, if he's crying because he's like, man, that psychic just told me I'm never going to get my life together, I'm going to die alone, I've got nothing going for me, I'm going to go see that psychic every time because that's an honest psychic. The next time a coach stands up and says, man, we don't have the quarterback we want. We're just trying to make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what. Or that guy's kind of a bum, but I'm going to try and coach him the best. Or comes in and says, you know, I don't really love our quarterback room, but we're going to see what we can make of it. That's a coach I'm going to listen to every single time. But when we were in this part of the season and all anybody's giving us is sunshine and roses, read the quotes that we're getting from coaches from teams that are expected to win 5 games and read the quotes from the coaches from the teams that are expected to get 15 wins. Same. So they're all lying to us right now. But that being said, still wildly excited about Fernando. That is not the only little piece of news coming out of the AFC, though, Carolina. There is news from the AFC West that impacts the Kansas City Chiefs. Rashee Rice, we all know about his previous problems, his previous legal issues. He was put on probation after his driving issue. Part of that probation included random drug testing. That is standard for most probation cases out of the state of Texas, where he currently lives. He failed one of those drug tests, had marijuana in his system, even though it is legal, at least medically it is legal in Texas. That is a violation of his probation for testing positive. He was going to have to serve 30 days in jail at some point during the next 5 years. That was his window to do it. Because he failed this drug test, it sped all of that up, and it means his 30-day sentence starts now, essentially. So he is going to miss OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And this comes just a week after having a cleanup surgery on his knee that he will now have to rehab in a county jail. So this is a worst-case scenario in many ways for Rashee Rice.
This is not great for Rashee Rice. And look, I don't know if this is going to come to fruition and rear its ugly head in November or December when it really matters for the Kansas City Chiefs. But for right now, it's a really bad look because this is not the first offense for Rashee Rice. And remember last year, the Chiefs offense lacked explosiveness. It didn't have that same kind of razzle-dazzle that we're accustomed to the Patrick Mahomes offense having because they didn't have a deep arsenal of pass catchers. You know, Xavier Worthy was banged up. Rashee Rice was off the field. This does hurt the football team. And I will always use one of my favorite Mike Vrabelisms, don't do dumb stuff to hurt the football team. Rashee Rice has now done several dumb things to hurt his football team. But I'm going to be honest with you, Fitzy, I don't feel bad for the Kansas City Chiefs because I don't feel bad for organizations that are willing to bring in players with legal histories, with character concerns, when those character concerns rear their ugly heads. And the Chiefs have had a history of not really, being willing to overlook character concerns. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. We saw it with Kareem Hunt when he had that domestic violence altercation. There's probably a long, long list of other players that I'm not thinking of right now. But this is what you get when you sign up for players that have a history like this. And it just feels like every day it's something new with Rashee Rice.
And that's, I think, one of the more surprising things is that they didn't really address this wide receiver room either. So we'll see what that means for the Chiefs moving forward. Certainly what happens right now may or may not impact what we see during the season, but I do think it's significant, again, to note he's just a week removed from having a cleanup procedure on his knee that was trying to help some of the mobility in that knee. He will now have to rehab that in county jail where he won't have special gym privileges of any sort, doesn't have special gym access. So what that means for the rehab process also gets really interesting for somebody that, frankly, should have known better in this instance. No matter what anybody thinks of the usage of marijuana, no matter the legality of it, when you are in a court case and the judge looks at you and says, you cannot do this, it's as simple as ... You cannot do it. All right, we'll keep breaking it down, but coming up next, the great Sal Pal going to give us all thoughts on the Eagles to figure out what's really going on with A.J. Brown and everything else. Coming up next, Sal Pal.
Who's a better promoter, him or Eddie?
Very different. I mean, Dana. I think in terms
Why?
of they run a business at UFC. They have a model. You could complain about it. You could say it's anti-fighter, but they know what they're doing. I don't think Eddie's going away. Do I think Dana has a smarter, more effective, more intelligent, better capitalized, better television connected thing going on than Eddie does? It's not even a question.
Should AJ Bonsa be a lock for the number one pick going to the Washington Wizards? What do you think, Chad?
He's been my favorite player to watch really all year. I love what AJ brings to the table and the upside. I think he's got the combination of a can't miss scorer who could just ultimately be, one of the elite top 5 players in the NBA. And I just don't think the Wizards take the risk. To me, he's the clear number one guy.
And the Jets with Darren Mucci as GM feel like they are figuring it out. Now, can Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, stay out of the way and let this thing progress? Does Aaron Glenn actually have the goods as head coach? I don't know that. But I think Geno Smith was a really sound signing. And I really do think, dodging lightning bolts here, the Jets could surprise people this year and be a lot better than the team you've been watching the last 15 years during this historic playoff drought.
Uh-oh, ball's up, ball's out. Tucson picks it up. We could have a scoop and score. Zachariah Twardowski, touchdown, Sugar Skulls, and just like that, Tucson right back in it. The scoop and score for the Sugar Skulls. I mean, what a moment for this young man in his first career start.
The Patriots are likely to land A.J. Brown, but other teams can't be ruled out. That per Mike Garafolo. Teams talks need to be rebooted as nothing has been agreed to. With Garafolo adding the deal doesn't need to happen on June 1st. Could even occur mid-July. Remember, this has all been delayed because of the salary cap numbers that will come from moving on from A.J. Brown. To get the latest on this and everything else, we bring in ESPN national correspondent Sal Pal, beginning his 22nd season hosting the NFL Matchup Show, the smartest show, the longest-running X's and O's show on TV. All right, so Sal, at this point, A.J. Brown, in your mind, if I say other than the Patriots, do you think there's still an open door where he goes somewhere other than New England?
Oh, of course there's an open door, Sean. And good morning, Sean. Good morning, Caroline. There's definitely an open door until the deal is done. I would agree with Mike G on that point. The compensation has moved. It moved from 2 number ones in 2027 draft to maybe a number 2 in the 27 draft. And now all the conversation centers around whether the Patriots will give up a first-round pick in the 2028 draft for A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown will enter his 31st age in the NFL. He'll be 31 years old. And will he even be on the New England Patriots roster when the Eagles finally reap that compensation? So clearly, you have to have the right deal for A.J. Brown. And congratulations to A.J. Brown. I did see on social media that he got married, and that's good for him. I mean, I've interviewed him many times, and I've always found him to be a real stand-up guy. He's very popular in the locker room, in the building in South Philadelphia, and he will definitely be missed. He was a popular player in Philadelphia, no question about that, and a good player. He had a bad postseason, no question about it. He clearly wants out. It's kind of sad for the Patriots that they have to wait to get him. It's sad for Brown that he's not involved in the off-season programs now. And, of course, for the Eagles, if they don't get any kind of compensation until 2028, that's not the optimum situation for Philadelphia either.
Before we get more into what a realistic trade could look like and A.J. Brown's future, you bring up his wedding. Congratulations to AJ Brown. Looked beautiful. But there has been a lot of speculation on social media about Jalen Hurts not being in attendance at AJ Brown's wedding. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, Jalen Hurts is involved in the offseason program with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't know what goes on behind the scenes with, players and whether or not they're available to go to weddings. But, I would like to echo what you said, Caroline. Congratulations to A.J. Brown. I'm a big believer in shalom in the home. You got to have your house in order to be good at your job. I've always believed that. And I think that's true in your family, in your locker room, in your business. I was in the military. I always preach that as an officer in the military. You got to make sure that you're taking care of your family first. And I'm glad for A.J. Brown. Congratulations to him. And I hope that the compensation comes down the pike quickly so that he can join a team, because he's a good player and he's a good teammate and he will make the New England Patriots better.
How did we get here with A.J. Brown to the point that, because you said a couple of times, Sal Pal, he's a good player. They need good players. How did we get to the point where they just can't come together on this?
Well, there's a lot of water under that bridge, Sean. Disagreements over the number of passes in the passing game, whether he was getting his touches, that sort of thing. I mean, you got to look at the National Football League and where it is right now. Last year, NFL teams scored 25.3 points per game. That is a 5-year high. Points come out of the passing game in the National Football League. And you look at the 3 division winners who scored under 400 points. 400 points is the demarcation line, usually, to get to the postseason and advance. And the 3 teams that won their division under 400 points were the Eagles, the Panthers, and the Steelers. So the Eagles clearly know that they got to get their point production up. That's why they changed offensive coordinators to Sean Mannion. That's why they're changing the offense. That's why they went out and got themselves a playmaker in Mekhi Lemon. Clearly, they understand that they must get better on offense. You really only have to look as far as the last 2 NBA postseason games to understand the importance of playmakers. Victor Wembanyama goes off in overtime. San Antonio beats the defending champs, the Thunder, in overtime. And then last night, Jalen Brunson, superior matchup against James Harden. And the Knicks come back from, 22 down to win that game. In professional sports at this level, when you're getting to the postseason, you need superior playmakers that create favorable, dominant matchups. That was clear in the NBA in the last 2 games. It's clear in the National Football League. That's what you have to have. That's why I'm involved with the matchup show. And that's why I think A.J. Brown is going to be good for New England. They didn't have that in the Super Bowl. They only scored 13 points in the Super Bowl. That's 12 points less than the team average per team this year per game, because they didn't have matchups against the Seattle Seahawks defense. So A.J. Brown's going to help the Patriots. The changes on offense will presumably help the Eagles. But the other thing, too, is, Sean and Caroline, you look at the National Football League right now, 65% of the teams, 21 out of 32, have changed offensive coordinators this offseason. Wrap your head around that. That's incredible. So you have incredible volatility in the most important aspect of the game in the National Football League. And the reason is there's so much pressure on these head coaches and quarterbacks to keep up with the Joneses around the league. Those teams that can score at will. Got to be able to do it. If you don't, you're going to get blown out in the Super Bowl like Seattle blew out New England, or the Eagles blew out the Chiefs 2 years ago.
You say A.J. Brown will help the New England Patriots, almost like it's as close to a done deal as it can be on May 20th. What has to happen in order for A.J. Brown to not be a New England Patriot?
Well, the general manager of the New England Patriots, Elliott Wolf, son of Ron Wolf, Hall of Famer, has got to call up Howie Roseman, the GM of the Eagles, and say, timeout, cuz. We don't know if we really want to give up a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. And then Howie Roseman says, well, I have other suitors. And then Wolf calls his bluff, right? And says, okay, go out there and see if you can get a first-round pick and come back to us when you want to get real. I mean, that's the way this could happen. But I believe he'll be with the New England Patriots in the end. I'm giving it an 85% chance he'll be with the New England Patriots. The only thing that could go wrong is the negotiations could get really squirrely between the two GMs in New England and Philadelphia, which I don't think will happen. These guys are two professionals. Brown is prepared to go to New England and rejoin Mike Vrabel. I'm not saying it's a fait accompli because you never say never in the NFL, as I started off this commentary. But to me, I think he's going to New England.
So what's the ceiling, post A.J. Brown, what's the ceiling for this Eagles team?
What's the ceiling for what, Sean?
For the Eagles team. How good is this Eagles team without A.J. Brown in this NFC?
Sean, you want to hear my notes on the NFL schedule release? You ready, baby?
Yes, let's go.
Let's go. All right. This season, the Eagles have the easiest strength of schedule of any NFC team that made the playoffs last year. Let me repeat that. This is a team that won back-to-back division champions and should have a harder schedule. The Eagles have the easiest strength of schedule of any of the NFC teams that made the playoffs last year. I think that should allow Philadelphia, even with all of the changes on offense, to win the division for a third straight year and be in serious contention. Let me say that specifically, serious contention for the number one seed in the NFC at the end of the year. How about that, Sean?
Yeah, I'm stunned. But it is interesting to me, though, because I feel like we become so obsessed with the conversation about the Rams and, to a degree, the conversation about the Seahawks that we don't necessarily talk about the Eagles in the same light. And it feels like even Sirianni, like some years we walk in and it's like, this is the greatest coach. And some years we walk in and this guy's a bum. And I'm trying to find where normal lies for this team. Where is that normal spot?
Well, Sean, you're absolutely right about Seattle and Los Angeles and San Francisco, to a lesser degree, Green Bay, clearly the Dallas Cowboys. I think if you look at the NFC, those are the teams where the championship window is open. Obviously, I'm leaving out Chicago, but you have to add the Bears to that too. Championship window open, and we could enumerate the reasons for all of those teams. In the AFC, championship window absolutely open for the Cincinnati Bengals. Getting Dexter Lawrence to play in the middle of that defensive line, attack the quarterback up the middle, where you have changes at the head coaching position in Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Caroline was just talking about the ineptness of the Kansas City offense. Now they're going to get Patrick Mahomes back. What kind of condition is he going to be in? So to me, the Bengals, who have, and I'm a big believer in strength of schedule, the third easiest schedule in the NFL, with Joe Burrow healthy, Dexter Lawrence playing on defense. So to me, I'm looking at the Bengals. I'm definitely looking at the Broncos. I'm definitely looking at the Chargers, where the championship window is wide open in the AFC, wide open.
So we spent a lot of time focusing on the Eagles offense, which is going to be fascinating to follow throughout the course of the season. But the Eagles defense made some changes as well. They moved on from Reed Blankenship, Nakobe Dean, and Jalen Phillips. We've heard some reports that Vic Fangio is flirting with retirement. So what do you expect to see from that side of the football, which has been a huge positive for this team over the last several years?
Oh, Caroline, I love when you fire Eagles questions at me. Let's go through them. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Number one, Vic Fangio's coming back, and that's a bad news for the rest of the National Football League, okay? They know he knows what he's doing, and he's very good at solving matchup problems that other teams present without blitzing the quarterback. Rush 4, drop 7, let's go play football. Let's play cover and make sure our pass rush gets home. We pepper in some blitzes off the corner. I think they have two of the best corners in the National Football League in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. Fangio knows how to deploy this defense. They did lose Phillips, but they got Grenard in that trade with the Vikings, signed him to a big deal. I think that's going to be fine. I think the biggest thing that you mentioned was right off the top, and the loss of Reed Blankenship. Heat-seeking missile, loves the football, goes and finds it. I believe that they will have to bolster the safety position sometime this summer to really round out a defense that still is going to be one of the dominant in the NFC.
You guys got to check it out. Obviously, we all know Sal Pal's great work. Follow him on Twitter, X. That's where you get to @SalPal ESPN. That's where you get to him there. And then the NFL Matchup Show, one of the smartest in the business. My friend, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We got to have you on as the season continues. Thank you for your time, brother.
Okay, you got it. Thank you.
Great stuff from Sal Pal, as always. Coming up next, more controversy around ... Unbelievably, LSU. We'll tell you about it.
Who's a better promoter, him or Eddie?
Very different. I mean, Dana. I think in terms
Why?
of they run a business at UFC. They have a model. You could complain about it. You could say it's anti-fighter, but they know what they're doing. I don't think Eddie's going away. Do I think Dana has a smarter, more effective, more intelligent, better capitalized, better television connected thing going on than Eddie does? It's not even a question.
Should AJ Bonsa be a lock for the #1 pick going to the Washington Wizards? What do you think, Chad?
He's been my favorite player to watch really all year. I love what AJ brings to the table and the upside. I think he's got the combination of a can't miss scorer who could just ultimately be, one of the elite top 5 players in the NBA. And I just don't think the Wizards take the risk. To me, he's the clear #1 guy.
And the Jets with Darren Mucci as GM feel like they are figuring it out. Now, can Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, stay out of the way and let this thing progress? Does Aaron Glenn actually have the goods as head coach? I don't know that. But I think Geno Smith was a really sound signing. And I really do think, dodging lightning bolts here, the Jets could surprise people this year and be a lot better than the team you've been watching the last 15 years during this historic playoff drought.
Uh-oh, ball's up, ball's out. Tucson picks it up. We could have a scoop and score. Zachariah Twardowski, touchdown, Sugar Skulls, and just like that, Tucson right back in it. The scoop and score for the Sugar Skulls. I mean, what a moment for this young man in his first career start.
If they get their way, LSU will have 2 players with Boston Celtics. That's right, Boston Celtics ties on their roster next year. One was a 2020 draft pick. That's right, 2020. One was waived in 2025. No word yet on whether Paul Pierce is also willing to wear purple and gold. This is the butt of jokes everywhere, but Caroline, this is modern college basketball. And, I see some people saying, oh, my God, how could Will Wade be doing this? Will Wade is killing college basketball. Will Wade is the worst thing. I see all of this on social media. And while acknowledging the helmet that's behind you and the fact that you went to LSU, I'm just looking at it from an outsider with no skin in the game saying a coach sees a loophole and he's taking advantage of it. I genuinely have, I know, shocking take to everybody. I have no problem with it. If you're going to have stupid rules, then let coaches take advantage of stupid rules.
Don't hate the player, hate the game. And look, I hate that rule. I did not like it when Charles Bediako was playing for Alabama. I think it's icky and gross that there is a Boston Celtics to LSU Tigers pipeline. That's wrong. That goes against everything that I think the NCAA stands for. But it's not Will Wade that's doing this. It's the system. You know, we saw from Jeff Goodman, longtime college basketball reporter. He said, quote, Will Wade, I wish you didn't come back to college basketball. Honestly, I mean that. I like Will. I've known Will since he was an assistant at Harvard back in 2007. But man, you suck for college basketball. You're making it into a mockery. Look in the mirror and understand it's not just about you. Don't try to ruin this sport. I hear you, Jeff Goodman, and I think we shared the same sentiment that I don't think that a Cleveland Cavaliers to LSU Tigers transfer is good for the NCAA or is good for college basketball. But Will Wade didn't make this rule. Will Wade isn't doing something that is not afforded to every other coach in college basketball. This is a loophole. This is an open hole that exists in the NCAA, and Will Wade's just taking advantage of it. I mean, last time he just straight up broke a rule. This time he's just taking advantage of something that is allowed in this sport. You know, I think Will Wade is just a lightning rod of controversy and for criticism. I get it. He's got a brazen personality. He is bold. He did what he did at LSU the first time around. He didn't leave NC State in probably the right way that he should have. I get it. A lot of people don't like Will Wade. I understand. But just because he is doing something that other college basketball coaches have done, and he is taking advantage of something that every other college basketball coach in America can do, does not make him the problem. The rules are the problem. The NCAA is the problem, and you just don't like him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a clown take from Jeff Goodman. Absolute clown take from Jeff Goodman. And to me, it's a clown take for a simple reason. When did Jeff Goodman become the arbiter of what's right and wrong for the future of college basketball? And this is where he responds, well, use some common sense. All right, common sense tells me if the NCAA can't agree on what the rules are and couldn't get the rules done in place in a way in time that actually restricts what's happening right now, that's the NCAA's fault. And why have they not been able to come up with a standard that actually sticks? Well, number one, every time they're challenged in court, they lose. That's important. Most of the time, I should say. Number two, and this is important, they can't all agree on where the moral line is. So I'm sorry, Jeff Goodman, or anyone else whose feelings are hurt because this seems like it's past the moral line. But I guess my question is, when did you get to decide what that line is? This is like everyone that comes in and says, well, I am pro players getting paid, but this is too much. You can't pay a player that much. Really? So this is the one place where market doesn't dictate earnings. Good to know. Good to know, because the last time I checked, every single time I turn around, somebody that has a job says, I don't make enough money. Do I then get to look at every one of them and say, well, I mean, look, I want you to make more money, but not doing this for a living. Now that there's got to be a line. There's got to be a line. We love free market in everything except for athletes. We love free market in everything except for sports. There isn't a collective bargaining situation here. There isn't a union. There isn't a standard. And there isn't a standard because smart people around NCAA sports haven't been able to decide on a standard because a bunch of selfish people for decades haven't been willing to find the line that actually sticks across the board landscape of college sports. So now you have a coach that comes in and says, well, if this ain't against the rule, I'm going to do it. Isn't that what we see all the time? We see that in games. If it's not against the rules, I'm going to figure out how to challenge it. We see that in money. If it's not against the rules, I'm going to do it. And now we see it in recruiting. Jeff, don't go blaming Will Wade for not caring about the future of college sports. Blame everybody that's been stuck in college sports for 20 years and was never proactive and now is reactive because you're reacting slow to a constantly moving target because of the situation created by ... the NCAA. I don't fault Will Wade at all here. And I think it's a clown take for any reporter that covers the sport to act like a coach has a moral obligation to the future of that sport beyond what the actual leaders of that sport have ever done.
It's his job to win. It's the same thing that I love hearing from NFL people of, well, that coach doesn't develop players for the NFL. That's not his job. It's not his job to coach in a certain style that translates to the league. His job is to win football games. Will Wade's job is to win basketball games. Now, I don't like it. I don't like that this is what college basketball has come to. But this is what it is. So you cannot like the current climate and you cannot like the loopholes that exist, but that's not Will Wade's problem. We just had up there the list of players that are currently committed to LSU, and you can see their ages there. 25. Yemadar is 25. RJ Luis, 23. Bryce Dessert, 23. Marcio Santos, 23. Mo Diabate, 22. Austin Nunez, 23. 22, 20. Like, the youngest player on this team is 20. That's how old I was when I graduated from college, okay? So I can hear everyone talking about, the age, and how that's currently a conversation now in the NCAA, the 5 to play 4 rule, that you have 5 years after high school to play 4 years, and after that, you're done. There's a certain age limit. I never heard anyone talking about the age of the Indiana football team this past year. Do you know what the average age was of the Indiana Hoosiers football team in 2025 when they won the national championship? 23 years old. Almost that entire team was a 4th or a 5th year senior, even a 6th year senior. You didn't know that because nobody talked about it, because it wasn't an issue, because it was Indiana, because everyone loves Kurt Signetti, and because he's funny and he says, Google me, because that's not the narrative that surrounds Indiana football. Now, again, I have no problem with Indiana football's average roster age being 23 years old, because they had NCAA eligibility, because that was within the rules. Now, do I think it can be bad for college football that we have 23-year-olds playing against 18-year-olds? Yes, I do. But those are the rules. So if that's not an issue for Indiana football, if it wasn't an issue for Michigan when their average age was 22 this past year when they won the national championship, why is it all of a sudden now a problem for Will Wade and LSU? If you're going to criticize Will Wade and LSU, I want you to bring that same energy to every other team and every other coach that follows the exact same guidelines that Will Wade does. Is he approaching crossing the line? He sure as heck is. He's getting close to it. But all that matters is that you don't cross it. That's good in strategic coaching, not just in college basketball, but in sports.
You want to tell me that 99% of the coaches involved in college sports are looking around and saying, man, I could go get that player, but morally, I'm not really sure because they're a little old. I'm not exactly sure. Man, they're looking around. Think about GPAs. For years, it was never about did the kid actually belong in college? It was, what do I have to do to get their GPA to get them in because I want them to play here? For years, we watched kids that probably shouldn't be in college the other way get advanced simply because basketball teams wanted them. We had controversies about tutors taking tests because this wasn't college sports. This was just semi-professional sports. Now, a lot of it is over the table. Instead of a bag of cash being kicked under a desk, it's a bag of cash being handed over the table, which again might make some people uncomfortable. But the fact is, Will Wade is right now testing the waters of what's legal and what's not legal, what's in the rules, within the rules, and what's not within the rules. But the only real judgment for Will Wade is going to be, does he win? And the minute he wins with this roster, if he's able to do so, everybody else is going to start doing the same thing. And then you say, oh, what's it mean for the future of college sports? I don't know. Frankly, I don't really care. I don't really care, because right now what I care about is, are we watching? Are we not entertained? At some point, we can get so worried about what it all looks like in 10 years. But if the rulers, if the actual people in charge of college sports gave a damn about what the sport actually looked like in a decade, we wouldn't be here now. A decade ago, they would have been proactive. It's amazing how when they had full control of everyone, when they couldn't get away, when they were able to basically throttle people back, when they were able to lie, cheat, and steal in the system under the table, they didn't care about the sport in a decade. Now, when everything's transparent, woe is me. Got to worry about 10 years from now. If you'd have been doing that in the first place, we wouldn't be here. Now you are and you're screwed. That's not my problem.
It's also too, like, what is it about Will Wade that just gets everyone's panties all in a wad? Did Sean Miller not do the exact same thing at Arizona? I don't hear anybody whining and crying about Sean Miller. No, I don't need everybody to like my basketball coach or my football coach or my women's basketball coach, for that matter. There's a long list of coaches at my alma mater that people do not like. But all Will Wade's job is to do is to win. And if he does that, people will support him. And if he doesn't, he'll get fired. Welcome to college basketball.
Being the most likable coach doesn't get you new contracts. Being the winningest does. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. right here. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for hanging out. Come back and watch Yahoo Sports Daily again tomorrow.